wonderful thing.
Good afternoon. My name is Chuck Gardner. I am the Associate Director of Cyber.org. There it is. We are a 501c3 nonprofit funded by the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. Pardon my use of a Mac, but we're going to try and get through this. Yeah, don't hold it against me. We're trying to get through this with as little interruption as possible. I'm on a panel Wednesday morning. If this doesn't work, please come and visit the panel hosted by Nancy Lomoro from DHS. We're going to be talking about some of these topics there too, so throw a hand up if I don't see that it blacks out, and we'll move on. Cyber.org is headquartered out of Bossier City, Louisiana. Let's just make this a narrative. And we have the really fantastic opportunity of working with the CISA grant since back in 2011. And it allows us to write curriculum, give it away for teachers across the country, and support them with professional development. And we do that with the intent of developing the nation's next cybersecurity workforce. bit.ly/FCIA 2022. Okay. Out with the old, in with the older. Okay. Look at that. All right. So building a cybersecurity workforce, we've been doing this since 2011, and to date we have more than 24,000 teachers who have access to the content. More than 16,000 teachers have been trained to use the curriculum. That first number is a little low. It's a couple months old. And the grand impact is over 3 million students who have been worked through this kind of content with their teachers. And what we want to talk about today is opportunities for K-12 to practice STEM, cyber, all for the preparation of cybersecurity. The speaker who stood up here before me highlighted some opportunities through some grant research with University of Arizona, highlighting that K-12 work at Basha High School is just south of Phoenix. Starts with a C, I forget the city. But where? Chandler. Janet Hartkoff is the teacher who's making that happen, and she's using our content to do it. And it's a wonderful story. We're working with Arizona State University. We're working with university partners across the country. But the point is to get this content into K-12, to start students thinking about careers in cyber, thinking about cyber hygiene at an earlier state, so that they're more prepared as they progress through their K-12, but also into the workforce or beyond. So some initiatives that help us do that include some of these really great partners, a lot of which you're familiar with through this event today: CISA, at DHS, NSA, DOD, NICE, Girl Scouts, Palo Alto, who's here today. And again, our three primary funding sources include that funding from DHS. NSA is helping us get an HBCU feeder program off the ground, where we're working with HBCUs across the country that have cyber and cybersecurity programs, working in a regional model to work to develop that feeder program from the high schools and get them access to the content, access to the technology to teach the content. And then DOD through DSEC as well as DODEA on bringing some of this content to those teachers. Girl Scouts cybersecurity badges. Cyber.org was the curriculum partner for Girl Scouts. Those 18 cybersecurity badges for all 6 grade levels. We were the partners who wrote that, and we've delivered over 1 million badges since then, since that launch in 2019. So there's a demonstration of unplugged cybersecurity opportunities, as well as technical in our high school content. I'm going to talk a little bit later about the K-12 Cybersecurity Standards. That's an opportunity for any teacher at any point in a student's school day to bring conversations on cybersecurity into the classroom. Our reach extends from coast to coast. We have teachers in all 50 states, 4 U.S. territories who have access to the content. We hope are using it in the classroom. You see some of the darker states, like obviously California, Texas, New York, Virginia. You expect those states to be doing a great job with cybersecurity education. But then there's North Dakota at the top, absolutely killing it with cybersecurity through partnerships with Cyber.org, Palo Alto Networks, and other groups like Microsoft Teals. They've got a K20W pathway that's looking at how cybersecurity can impact a student's career, not just in K-12, but beyond. So the curriculum that we have that is at no cost for teachers does span elementary, middle, and high school. From the left side of the graphic, we've got some elementary and middle school topics like computational thinking, where we're bringing computer science thought into any classroom. We've got activities for English teachers, math teachers, and science teachers. Content they're already presenting, just spun in a computational thinking way to give them the opportunity to bring CS into any classroom. Get kids thinking at an earlier stage. And that's happening right now in 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. This little exploding head is the computational thinking icon. We've got one in high school too, because there's a high school curriculum for computational thinking. We're going to spend 9 weeks in an ELA setting talking about computational thinking. We're going to spend 9 weeks in a math, 9 weeks in a science setting talking about computational thinking in the high school classroom. Back to elementary and middle, the little cogwheels represent our STEM EDA, or Explore, Discover, and Apply curriculum. This is engineering. It's based on the engineering design process. Students are going to work through an iterative series of steps to try and solve real-world problems using resources that are available to them. I want to say on the cheap, right? This isn't thousands of dollars worth of supplies that I need to build these things. We're doing a simple egg drop activity, but not like we had egg drop. We're taking an egg drop activity, but we're relaying it to a refugee crisis. And then students are going to do research on first level sources using internet-connected devices. They're going to design a storyline around why their egg represents, how their egg represents this humanitarian crisis that they're responding to. There's a CARS model where we're going to use a small 3D printed seat design and design seat belts, and the students are going to solve these problems using examples that they can think through on their own. The little city structure at the top represents our course called Cyber Society, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but that's an unplugged opportunity for middle school and high school cybersecurity conversations in the classroom. And then the blocks represent our Science Plus, our coding and cyber fundamentals. This is where we're getting students involved in block-based programming and thinking about how cyber impacts science in the classroom. High school space, things get a lot more technical. We've got some robotics platforms like the Bobot here that I have from Parallax. We have 3 courses that are built around a robotics platform like this called Cyber Literacy, Cyber Literacy 2, and Cyber Science. We've got a technical high school cybersecurity course where we're using a cyber range, and students are preparing for their Security Plus credential from CompTIA. We've got some computer science mapped to AP computer science principles. We've got some advanced math, some physics, some really great technical opportunities for students to begin thinking about how cyber is going to play a role in their world. We do have courses that are aligned to the suite of CompTIA entry-level credentials, including IT Fundamentals, A+, Security Plus. Net Plus is not yet available. It'll be this summer. We're finishing up that development work right now. How do we outreach to students? We have a series of career profile cards. Here's an example of a trading card size deck. We have analyzed 24 careers based on the NICE Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. And we've taken a look at what kinds of things do students need to know about these jobs so that they can learn whether or not they fit with these jobs. We're going to give them information about whether or not degrees are required. You see these 3 cards. There's a yes, a no, and a yes. The system testing and evaluation specialist, the research that we've performed says you don't necessarily need a degree to succeed in this job. We've given them some salary information, some median salaries across those career fields, $100,000, $47,000, $110,000. Job growth percents, some soft skills that they might use in those degrees, as well as some common job duties. These are available for download as PDFs, as posters. We've got some hard copies we can send home, but you can read more about them. There's a lot more in-depth exploration of some of these jobs on cyber.org/career-exploration. So some outreach for students to make them career aware in cyber. So we talk about a multiplier effect. This is a really informal study we performed up in northern Louisiana, where we're headquartered. We've been working with Louisiana Tech, Grambling State University, and Bossier Parish Community College for the last 10 or 12 years, and the high schools that support them. And we took a look at all of the high schools in Louisiana and analyzed those who are teaching cyber.org content in the teal and those that aren't teaching cyber.org content in the purple, and found that there's an average multiplier of about 4x on the schools that have access to cyber.org content and are sending students into computer information systems, cybersecurity, cyber engineering programs at those universities. We're not a local educational institution, so we can't collect student data, so this was very informal through the universities and the high schools that serve them. But it was fairly revealing, so we like to highlight it. So I apologize. There's a couple of colleagues listed on these slides. This was from a previous presentation. I didn't update them with mine. But we want to talk a little bit about what cyber education is and what it isn't. We want you to know that in our mind, cyber education is knowledge related to information and communicating technologies. Right? We want to make sure that students understand that it's the practice of defending these devices like computers, servers, mobile devices, etc. And that together, education is learning how devices operate and how to keep yourselves and others safe in cyberspace. A lot of the work that we're doing is transferring knowledge so that students can continue to transfer it to others who need it, like folks in their community, like aunts and uncles and grandparents, making sure that they're able to talk about these topics in the classroom so that they can go home and talk about them in other environments. So cyber education is the why. But it's not, it shouldn't be scary. It shouldn't be simply visiting websites or giving students tablets or laptops to use. That's not cyber education. Keyboarding and programming. Some of these may be an introduction, right, or a gateway to cyber education, but these are not examples of cyber education. We talk about a business class teaching Microsoft credentials. It's not necessarily cyber education, depending on the credentials they're teaching. If it's Word and Excel and Access and PowerPoint, those are not necessarily cyber education courses. But if we're leading to a credential like a Security Plus, we've got examples of cyber education courses. We can't assume that the software is going to keep the students safe. That's simply because students know how to operate a device. They're going to stay safe. Right? These are not the whys of education. Where we're covering a lot of that content is, like I mentioned, cyber literacy, that robotics-based course. We're going to give kids access to a bot. We're going to let them build circuits. We're going to talk about electricity. We're going to add sensors. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. We're going to let them program it to do things autonomously. That's going to get into coding. That's going to get into awareness. And the bot eventually is going to be aware of its surroundings. We've got cyber education. This is a platform that's approachable by 7th and 8th graders. There's a version of this that has a microbit on it. If you're familiar with microbit, it's a device about $20. It's about the size of a small deck of cards, a travel deck of cards, but I can program it in block-based programming that advances the applicability to early middle school and even late elementary school. So in cyber literacy, we're doing things like, I don't know if you can see this, subjects, humanities, robotics, and coding. Not only are we talking about the robotics platforms and the programming to use it, but we're talking about why we're doing these things. What are the ethical choices behind this? Just because I can build it doesn't mean I should. So our connections to cyber instruction always include that humanities component for students to reflect back on the things that they're doing and why they're doing it. We have a great conversation in the cyber literacy course. It's a debate on privacy versus security. And it's funny when students finally realize that you can't have both. You either have privacy or you have security, but you can't have privacy and security. And the easiest place to reference that is an airport. You expect you're going to get searched as you go through an airport. That's security. There's no privacy as you walk through security at an airport. You may have a locker at school and you think you have privacy, but it's searchable because we need security. So it's some really great conversations happening in those humanities components of our high school curriculum. We talk a little bit about some of the unplugged opportunities. Cyber society is where that happens. Two really great colleagues of mine, Charlene and John, are supporting some professional development this summer where they're going to talk about our Cyber Society content. And in Cyber Society is a whole unit devoted to media literacy for middle school and high school. Is that me? The feedback coming from me? I am away from my phone. So when we talk about media literacy, we want students to be aware of some of these pitfalls that they may encounter as they research for other courses on the internet. Right? We want to understand that fake websites can be developed, and you don't want to fall victim to someone who's developed a fake website. When individuals click on a site, they can introduce malware or ransomware. These are non-technical conversations we're having with students around pitfalls that they may see in cyberspace. To examine the actual technical pitfalls, we do that in our cybersecurity course. This is unplugged. This is research-based. Students are working collaboratively in small groups, critically thinking about components, about opportunities in cyber. So what we talk through students on this media literacy component is learn to read clues, right? Scrutinize the details, examine URLs, find out about the writers. If you're going to go to a news source that you've never heard of before, find out who it's published by and do a little bit of research on who they are. Take a gut check, right? Gauge the emotional impact, analyze the writing. You can write now if you're in 5th or 6th grade or 9th or 10th grade, right? Examine the writing, analyze the design, and dig deeper. Follow the path and locate the source of the news. Don't just take the Facebook posts at face value. Cyber Society is a course that's all based on humanities. We've identified for 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. It's got some applications for 8th and 7th. Content in that course is extensive. It includes things like law, politics, terrorism, ethics and social issues, communities, business, artificial intelligence. There's that media literacy piece I was talking about. And the last one here, one of my favorites, analysis and investigation of cyber-based scenarios. The team at cyber.org has created environments that we can give students to work through as they're living through a movie, right? So it's a scenario of some event has happened somewhere in the world. There's nothing they need to look up online. We've provided all the data. It's designed to be copied or distributed as PDFs, and students are going to work through what appear to be original source documents to try and find out what has happened. For example, a hydroelectric facility in France has failed and begun opening and releasing water into the village below. People's lives are at stake. There's communication that has happened. There have been press releases from various countries across the globe. Students have to work together to figure out the who, the what, the when, the where, and the why behind that event. They're going to get access to financial records. Follow the money, right? They're going to get access to emails and text messages. They're going to get access to access logs. And through all of that, it's their job to figure out what happened. They're going to analyze the situation as a DHS analyst. We've got 8 scenarios that are available to teachers at no cost. All the development's been done. You just have to make copies and give them to kids and see where they go with it. It's entirely engaging. It's fascinating. So when we talk about that technical component, we want to get students credentialed in K-12 so that they can be employable. We did an analysis of the credentials that are most in demand across northern Louisiana, and we found overwhelmingly Security Plus was that #1 credential. And this is typical across the country. When you analyze state job needs and you look at the credentials that are most in demand, I think Glassdoor is the website that represents it best. Security Plus, far and away. Net Plus second. A Plus third, IT fundamentals. That's why we chose CompTIA to map a lot of our content to, because they are the ones that are in demand. This was back in, I think, 2018 we did this survey, but it's still true today. So again, we're doing this in the technical high school cybersecurity space, and that course is called Cybersecurity. It is based on access to a cyber range, which is a virtual sandbox where students can explore operating systems, test out malicious attacks, and see what it's like to defend against them. We have 180 hours worth of content that's based on every objective of the Security Plus exam, including these 5 units. There's 150 lessons. There's 50 labs. There's 35 case studies where we're going to take students on a current events tour. If I can't describe it in the lab, I'm going to use a current events example that says this is how it's been done recently. For example, there's a dumpster diving example that we highlight in a case study from the National Hospital System in Europe, where some equipment was offloaded. It was prepared for destruction. The hospital system had a contract for a disposer to come in and guillotine these hard drives to make them unreadable. And they chose to let someone else handle it. The pieces ended up at a thrift store, a Goodwill-style store, and they were purchased. And the hard drives weren't guillotined, and someone was able to collect thousands of records of patient data from these devices. Hard to show that on a range, so we've used this article to help students understand this particular objective of the CompTIA Security Plus exam. If I can, I'd love to log in and show you what a cyber range looks like. One of the best ones we found for K-12 use is the US Cyber Range from Virginia Tech. It allows students access to each student gets access to Kali Linux and a vulnerable Windows 7. And with that, we've identified 50 opportunities to practice Security Plus objectives so they can get that hands-on training. Because CompTIA recommends 2 years of industry experience, we can't do that with high school students, so we're using a range to be able to afford them that opportunity. So I wanted to talk a little bit about standards, and that's where we'll spend most of the rest of the time. Cyber.org undertook a project back in 2020 to develop learning standards for cybersecurity education in K-12. We started by looking at the states that currently have learning standards. And these are some examples, whether they're standalone cybersecurity standards, whether they're embedded into computer science, whether they're standalone like Project Lead the Way. That Kentucky has identified as their source of cybersecurity standards. These are the links. If you're interested, I can share this. And then organizations that are doing things with cybersecurity standards, including things like CSTA and ISTE that have embedded cybersecurity standards in their other standards projects. National Cryptologic Museum Foundation and the NICE Cybersecurity Workforce Framework are two other examples where cybersecurity expectations are available, are documented for school use. So the Cyber.org project, it wasn't something that we wanted to write. We wanted teacher input. We wanted teachers who are teaching the content, who are boots on the ground, to provide the input for this document. The document is, again, it's extensive. It covers 3 categories of standards: computing systems, digital citizenship, information and network security. There are opportunities for K2, for 3.5, 6.8, and 9.12. And they're overarching. They're not necessarily technical standards. For example, in the computing systems standard, communication and networking, the first standard is listed as network communication. And at the K2 space, we want students to understand the concept of being online. At this level, student discussions should focus on grade appropriate examples of being online and describing various benefits of being connected through devices. At the 3.5, it becomes describe network communications. At this level, student discussions should focus on previous standards as well as grade appropriate examples of network communications. In the 6.8, we want to compare and contrast network topologies, and at 9.12, we want to explain the layers within the OSI model. So we're getting progressively more complex and rigorous, but not necessarily technical. We do hope at some point to put out a technical set of standards, but these were written by educators. So we had some federal partners and some collegiate partners who participated, but for the most part, there were 30 educators from across the country who came together for the writing of the standards, 24 partners who came together for the review of the standards. Between the 2020 and 2021 school year, we wrote, reviewed, redesigned, and finally published in August of 2021 our Cybersecurity Learning Standards. And these are available on cyber.org/standards. I've got just a couple of copies with me today. They're just too heavy to tote around, but we're certainly happy to mail you some if you would like a couple. I know there's a social getting ready to kick off, so I see a line at the started already. There's a line back at the bar. So I wanted to show the range. I don't know that I can log in here, though. Let me try something real quick. Any questions? Cyber.org is where we are for free access to the curriculum. Again, requirements are your K-12, have impact on K-12 students, and also that you're a teacher in this country. But the sign-up link here at cyber.org is where you would send folks if they wanted to gain access to this content. We do have a series of workshops coming up. All of our professional development events are free. We have an introduction to a cyber range coming up later this month. We have a week-long cybersecurity boot camp where we're going to take educators on a 5-day rigorous run through a lot of the labs that are in our cybersecurity content. There's that Cyber Society Unplugged course I was talking about. And then Cyberbot is where we're doing robotics with cyber literacy. So this is the STEM aspect of it. We are hosting a national conference in Washington, D.C. this summer between June 20th and 22nd. Spaces are still available, $50 to register, and it includes all food on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, breakfast and lunch, and it's going to be at the Westin Alexandria Old Town. We do some work with some partners across the country. We were in South Carolina last week working with Sumter County Schools. We're going to be in Indiana later this summer. We do work with blind and vision impaired groups from across the country. Virginia Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired asked us to help them develop some accessible curriculum for their students with disabilities. These are two projects from those camps, and this is a cipher disk. If you're familiar with cryptography, a little secret decoder ring. He does love his show and tell. We 3D printed a cipher disk with Braille lettering on it, so our BVI colleagues could also do some encryption. So if you want to take a look at that, it's here. But this is an example of so what we did was we took cyber literacy and we made it accessible, which means we basically took all the visual components out of it. There's no PowerPoints. Everything is described, but students are going to get this bot not assembled, but in a box, and they have to put it together. And it's amazing to see these camps and watch these kids build these bots and then wire these circuits and then program that code. I could talk all day. So this is a project using an ultrasonic distance sensor, 3 simple wires, a little bit of code, and a sound output. And what it's going to do, it's going to interpret distance and convert it to an audible pitch that I can hear. So as the distance to the sensor changes, it provides a numeric output that then the bot is interpreting, manipulating, turning it into a frequency number, and sending that value out through the speaker. And they build this circuit in a 5-day summer camp. We're doing this camp this summer in Maine and in Arkansas. This bot has an accelerometer. So you know that reaction when you pick up your phone and the screen turns on? You know the Tom and Jerry commercial cartoon where there was a little penguin inside the refrigerator that when you closed the door, he ran out and turned the light switch off. When you opened the door, he ran out and turned the light switch on. Right? It's not actually a gremlin inside your phone. It's an accelerometer. It knows when it's being picked up. And there's a light sensor that knows when it's next to your ear so that it shuts off. So we're talking about those components in tactile pieces that I can pick up and I can touch. This is the accelerometer, right? I know what it is now. But when I install it on this bot, and now I can talk about gravity and how a bot interacts with gravity, I'm going to take the X and the Y value of the tilt of this bot and convert it into audible sound. Same process. I'm taking the values, I'm manipulating it, and I'm exporting it through this device, through this speaker. But now there's 2 tones. Right? So if I take a while to change the other tone. Sorry for the folks in the back. There's no Y. Why is the Y not working? There should be a second tone. So there's the X. And this is the Y. But may have damaged in transit. Anyway, our BVI projects are here if you'd like to take a look at them. I've got a copy of the standards. We've got some cards here. Sir? Oh, I thought, hey, y'all. Last thing, I promised. All of our content is housed on the Canvas Learning Management System, .instructure.com. And this is what teachers are going to get access to, and it is all free for K-12 in the country. There's our Cyber Society, our non-technical cybersecurity research-based course, and these are the topics: law, politics, terrorism, ethics, communities. Our high school cybersecurity, all based on the CompTIA Security Plus exam. I apologize if you get dizzy, but I'm going to scroll. 150 lessons. So everything in this column are the lessons. Anything in this column is a lab or a case study. There's Objective 1. Here comes Unit 2, Unit 3, Unit 4, and Unit 5. And you see case studies and labs throughout. Anything that's a lab operates on a range. Anything that's a case study deals with current events. And this is free for teachers to have access to. All of our content lives there. And the last thing is the US cyberrange.org. It's connected through my Google. It's going to be a real pain in the butt for me to log into this right now. But this is a virtual platform that's hosted in a web browser, very lightweight, and it doesn't use the school's network to give students access to practice malicious attacks. There's a flat rate pricing on this, $14 per student per month. Still a little high, but it's getting kids in front of malicious software in a safe and secure environment. If you're interested in learning more about that, I can demo it on my Mac. It's the last session of the day. It's already quarter after, so if you have any questions, please feel free to stop by. Like I said, Wednesday morning, Nancy Lamore from CISA is moderating a panel that I'll be on. If you're interested, it's going to be in the main hall Wednesday morning. Thank you. I've got cards if you need them.